Well, greetings, my beloved clients and friends. Doing a follow-up video to a video we did on February 10th about GameStop and why we had added GameStop to the portfolio again. And what we talked about was that Ryan Cohen, the CEO, had number one, he had been buying the stock for himself. Number two, he had arranged a compensation plan based on him growing the market cap of the company from 10 billion to 100 billion and EBITDA of 10 billion cumulative. And so those are both bullish signs, right? And three, he announced that, and the third thing, he had raised capital through issuing stock and debt of about 9 billion. So he was sitting on about 9 billion in cash. And he announced that he was actively seeking to buy something, make a big purchase of a company. Okay, so that piqued our interest, and it seemed like it made sense, knowing what we know about Ryan Cohen and how one of his mentors is Warren Buffett, and you could see him laying the groundwork to follow in the steps of Warren Buffett. And he seemed like the guy that could do it based on his track record at Chewy and also what he had done at GameStop. So that was February 10th, just under 3 months ago. It's May 3rd, so almost 3 months. And on Friday, May 1st, it was announced that GameStop is pursuing an acquisition of eBay. This was announced after the market closed on Friday, so we've had the weekend to digest it, and we'll see how the market's going to react on Monday. But in after-hours trade on Friday, eBay was up like 11 or 12%, and GameStop was up 5 or 6%. So the market seems pretty excited about this, and there have been some naysayers as well. And one of the themes of the naysayers was, well, how's he going to do that? GameStop has a market cap of 11 billion, while eBay has a market cap of 45 billion, right? And there's some dumb jokes about, how's this little company going to buy this big company? Well, actually, it's really quite simple. The same way most people buy a house. If someone's going to buy a $500,000 house, most of the people that end up doing that, and it happens, thousands of times every day, 70% of them don't have the 500,000. They have maybe 5 or 10 or 25 or 50,000. And how do they buy that? OPM, other people's money, right? They have credit, and the bank gives them the majority of that money, and they go out and they buy that. So it's not like something that's never been heard of. A lot of people driving around a $50,000 car, and they didn't pay $50,000 for that car. They walked into the dealership and maybe they had 1,000 or 2 or 3, but they walked out with a $50,000 car. How'd they do that? OPM, other people's money, right? So Ryan Cohen, we said he has $9 billion of cash to work with. If this company's 45 billion market cap, he could put 20% down and go get the money from OPM, right? Other people's money. It's really, that's not going to be the barrier to this acquisition. He has this cult following that'll definitely send money to him. He'll probably drive the stock up, which he would be able to then issue stock and raise some of that cash, whether before or after the transaction, to pay down that debt. And the thing about eBay, let's talk a little bit about eBay and why would he buy this company. So eBay was a darling of the internet in the 90s and early 2000s. It was, that was a thing. Oh, you could buy it on eBay. they were, even before Amazon, they were transforming the face of retail, where you could just buy stuff online, from any place in the world. And you could sell stuff online to any place in the world. It was this online, like a swap meet, really. um, and it was very popular, and it was a darling. And then Amazon took it to the next level. They took that same platform and said, okay, anybody could sell anything to anybody on our platform, and look what they've been. So, but eBay kind of hit its peak and leveled off. It had $11 billion in sales 15 years ago, and last year it had $11 billion in sales. So it's been kind of basically flat, right? It's kind of leveled off. It's found its steady state, its maturity. But that's not to say that it's a dying company. It's a very healthy and vibrant. It has 70% gross margins, 20% net margins. So it's generating a ton of cash, about $2 billion a year in free cash flow. And what are they doing with that cash? They're buying back their stock. So 15 years ago, they had 1,400, I don't know how many zeros after that, of shares outstanding. And now they have 453 or so. So they've paid down 2/3 of their outstanding stock, meaning they've been buying back the company from shareholders. And when you do that, the basis of one basis of a stock valuation is earnings per share, some kind of multiple of earnings per share. Well, there's two variables in that, earnings and shares. So if earnings stay flat but shares go down, then your earnings per share goes up, right? If your earnings are $3 and you have 3 shares, then it's $1 per share. But let's say you keep buying back those shares, and now 15 years later you have 1/3 the number of shares. You only have 1 share, and the earnings have stayed flat, only $3. So $3 of earnings over 1 share is $3 per share. So your earnings per share tripled by doing nothing but maintaining the company and buying back your shares. So that's what's been happening to eBay, and the stock has really been doing quite well. In the last 10 years, the stock has gone from about a low of $24 a share to just over $100 a share. So it's doubled twice. 25 to 50, 50 to 100 is basically doubled twice in 10 years, doubling every 5 years. That's an average of about 14% return on the stock of a company that's really hasn't grown. And you could see in looking at the financials that they've been doing a lot of financial engineering and manipulating, and so they've been busy. It seems like it's a pretty well-run company and they've decreased their head count, they've decreased their share count, they've just operated more efficiently, and when interest rates were really low, they actually acquired some debt to buy shares, which, if you could borrow at 3-4%, why not? And so it seems like it's a pretty well-run company, and he's just going to buy it. And so when a company gets to that mature stage, kind of reminds me of what happened to Alexander the Great. I read a biography about him, and it said, I don't remember what the age was, in his early 30s. Like at the age of 30, he lay on his bed crying because there were no worlds left to conquer. And he had started conquering in Macedonia. He went to Greece and then Turkey, and he kept going east, Middle East, Persia. He hit the Indian Ocean, and he was like, his guys were tired, he was tired, there was no worlds left to conquer, and he lay on his bed crying, So that's kind of what happens to companies. They start and they're growing, and they become a regional success, then a statewide success, then a national success, and maybe even an international success. You know, like Starbucks, who started in Seattle and they started expanding outside of there. Now they're on every corner in the world, basically. But you get to a point where you hit the Indian Ocean and you can't expand anymore. And it's like you hit that steady state. And it looks like eBay hit that maybe about 15 years ago. And it's just been this level company that's generating a bunch of cash. And so in the world of Wall Street, where they require growth, that's not super popular, you know. But there's things you can do to, you know, enhance your value, and they've been doing a good job of that. Though one of the big risks is when a company that's been growing and it plateaus and it reaches that level, and they have this nice cash flow, is that they'll take that cash flow and do something dumb with it for the sake of growing. They found a core competency and it's worked and it's generated a bunch of cash, and they were growing and now they've stopped growing, so they want to keep growing, so they decide to acquire something or go into another area that's not their area of expertise, and then, you know, they fail because they were good at one thing and they went into something else and it didn't work. That's called the Peter Principle. The Peter Principle is that, like in labor, if in final equilibrium, everyone's in the job that they're not good at. Because the principle is that, you know, you have a job, you do good, you get a promotion. And you do good in your new job, you get another promotion. And you do good in your new job and you get another promotion. And then you're in a job that you're not that good at. You finally get to where you're, oh man, you know, my capabilities have become limited. And that's the job you end up staying at for the rest of your career, because you don't promote out of it because you're not that good at it, right? So, and companies will do that too. They'll expand and then they'll get into something that they're not good at. And the story has been retold many, many times on Wall Street. Their last acquisition was the one that did them in, because they got into something that at the wrong time or the wrong industry or something that they weren't good at. So there's a lot of companies that have learned how to say, you know what, this is what we're good at, this is what we're going to stay doing, and we're not going to try to get fancy and change things up. Like, for example, Hershey's chocolate. You know, they're like, okay, we make Hershey bars where every place we want to be, and you know, really, if you decide you want a Hershey bar, you could walk into any convenience store and there it is at the register, and to satisfy your cravings, and it's the same as it's been for hundreds of years, and it's just there. It's just, there's no place else for them to expand or anything else for them to get into, but they're generating a ton of cash, or ketchup or salt, or, you know, WD-40. You know, they have the one product that's good and generates a bunch of cash. So that's kind of like eBay. That's where they were. And so what Ryan Cohen can do is buy them. Now, they're not trading super cheap. Reasonable, but not super cheap. So he's not getting them at a bargain basement price. But what he learned, I think, from his mentor Warren Buffett was, and what Warren learned upon the way, is when you buy these great companies, you don't have to get them at a bargain basement discount price. Like when he bought See's Candy, he learned a lot from that. He bought that probably 50 years ago and he still owns it, and it's generated a ton of cash for him. And so his solution to the problem that these companies were having, that had been successful and reached that steady state, and they were generating a lot of cash and didn't know what to do with the cash, his solution was, I'll buy the company, keep you in your job, and you send the cash to me. You send the cash to Omaha and we'll invest it for you. And that was a relief to a lot of companies, because they were like, what I like to do is run this company, and I got this to the state I want to be, and I don't really want to grow anymore, and I don't want to get outside of my core competency, and but I don't know what to do with the cash. It's sitting there. And so what eBay's been doing with it for the last 15 years is buying back their stock, and it's been working. But now they're going to send it to Ryan Cohen. I don't know where he's at, New York or something. I think he's in New York, or Texas. I think he's in Texas. Yeah. So they're going to send it to Ryan, and he's going to grow that money. So another kind of the noise from the peanut gallery is like, well, but how's he going to run two companies now? Well, eBay looks like it's being run pretty good. He could leave that management in place the same way Warren Buffett runs hundreds of companies. He has a furniture mart and a jewelry store, and he has Brooks shoes and Dilly bars and mobile home company and a gas station and insurance companies. How does he run all these companies? He doesn't. He buys companies with good management and leaves them in place and just has them send the money to Omaha. Because what Warren Buffett is good at is capital allocation. And Ryan Cohen's a good capital allocator too. So it's a win-win. It's a win for that company because they could just focus on just running the business, maintaining, not trying to grow it, not trying to do anything fancy, which is pretty easy because it's in that steady maintenance state. And they send the cash to Warren, and he invests it for them and gets good returns for them. So I think that in a nutshell what Ryan is going to do. And his goal was 100 billion in market cap, and so with these two companies together, that's like 55 billion in market cap, and if the market puts a premium on it, it'll be probably north of 60 billion in market cap. And really he just needs to do one other acquisition like that in the next few years, buy one other eBay type company, and he's at 100 billion in market cap. And that EBITDA number was a cumulative EBITDA. So just eBay alone is generating 2 billion in cash flow. 5 years of that is 10 billion, and it hits it. So, and EBITDA that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So if he leverages this up and he uses that cash flow to pay the debt that he used to buy eBay, because that's what he's going to do, right? That doesn't hurt his EBITDA number because that interest expense is taken out of EBITDA, which was based on what his goal is based on. So that interest expense doesn't work against him in his metrics to hit his bonus. It's pretty smart. So yeah, I think that's why he bought eBay, or he's trying to buy eBay. And they said if the board doesn't approve, he could take it to the shareholders. They can make it difficult for him to try to buy it, but he has other ways. So it's not a done deal yet. It's just announced, and so they've been buying up shares of eBay prior to this announcement, and so it should be interesting in the next few months to see what happens. But I think we'll get a positive reaction on the stock, which was our goal. And I'll tell you, it reminds me of another story. Why would you buy a company that's not growing? And what would be the interest in that? Well, I used to do that at the bank many years ago. Help clients do that. And one example that comes to mind was this steel rolling company in Orange, California, and we helped this guy buy it for like $10 million, and he had $1 million. So he had $1 million, he got $9 million in financing, and he bought this company for $10 million. It was a 10-year note, and the business, how did he pay that $9 million note? From the cash flow of the company, because it was a stable company that it wasn't growing, but it was generating a lot of cash. And it also paid him like a $275,000 a year salary. So at the end of 10 years, his note was paid off. You know what he did? Sold the company. Guess how much he sold it for? I think like $10 million. So he bought it for 10. He sold it for 10, and he walked away with what? $10 million. And how much did he put into it? $1 million. He grew his 1 million to 10 million. You might say, well, but what about the taxes? What taxes? If you buy it for 10 and you sell it for 10, what's your capital gain? 0. He walked out with $10 million tax free. Yeah, he invested 1, he walked out with 10. Man, and then he sold it to some other guy who's probably gonna do the same thing. And I was like, man, where does that line start? In 10 years, I wanna be the next guy in that line. And so it's amazing what the CFO is doing the heavy lifting here at eBay, and he's been doing a good job. You could keep him in place. And they're talking about, well, so what are the synergies between eBay and Gamestop? And they're saying, well, yeah, they both sell collectibles and they have an online presence and this and that. You know what? What are the synergies between Dilly Bars and Nebraska Furniture Mart? You know, what are the synergies between C's Candy and Pilot Triple J gas station? There doesn't have to be any synergies. They just generate a lot of cash flow that goes to Omaha. So, I mean, if there's synergies in that transaction, that's just icing on the cake. And if he could, he's done a very good job at GameStop of running it efficiently. Like in the most recent report, they missed pretty big on revenue, but their expenses were way down, so they beat incredibly on earnings. So he's probably gonna, cut expenses down at eBay and generate more cash, and use that to probably for the next acquisition. For the cash flow from GameStop and eBay, 1, pay down that debt, and 2, get ready for the next acquisition in a few years. So I think it's a good strategy. A couple things that concern me a little bit is to raise that kind of money, he's probably going to dilute our position, either issue more stock or put debt on the balance sheet. So that's going to dilute us a little bit, because more stock dilutes our stock, and debt is above stock in the capital stack. So we're going to get a little diluted. So that's a little bit of a bummer. So will the synergy and the value of the offset that dilution? I think it will. The other thing is he's probably going to hit that $35 billion bonus, all the bogeys to get that and that's kind of a big number. How is he going to pull $35 billion in cash out of the company to pay himself? So that's going to dilute us a little bit. So those two dilutive effects, the financing of this acquisition and the paying of his bonus are going to dilute us a little bit. That's going to impact, our returns. I mean, just because the stock goes from a 10 billion market cap to 100 billion market cap doesn't mean we're going to 10x because of the dilution. So, I think there's some upside. I think we could probably get a double out of it. We bought it in the 23, 24 range. And I'll probably buy some more on Monday. But, I mean, don't expect a 40x return like what we got last time. But I think we could probably get a double, which I'd be happy with. And last time I underestimated it too. Last time I was thinking, man, we could get probably a 5x on this, and as we were getting into it, I was like, maybe we get 10x, and we ended up getting 40. So, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it has some upside, a little bit of upside. A double's not bad at all. I'd be happy with that. But we're gonna keep an eye on it. And I think the other thing about Ryan Cohen, he has a cult following. So I'm sure his fanboys are gonna run the price up. And That's what they did last time, and we were able to get out at this crazy price because of those fanboys that ran it up beyond really what it was worth. And so we might have that opportunity again. So fundamentally, I think it enhances the value, and then, you know, the fanboy effect might give us a little bit of a tailwind. So that's kind of what we're looking at, and so we're kind of excited about what's going to be happening in the next few months. See if we can get a win for you guys. All right, call me if you guys have any questions, and we'll be in touch. Have a great day.